developed who had some background in a knowledge area, geography, commerce, or another area, and then they learned the law, so they became learned. So I don't know if persistence in making 90 phone calls qualifies me to call myself learned. But anyway, our next speaker can take that claim of learned very easily. Wanjiru Gathira is a trained lawyer, and she is the managing director of Social Impact Institute, a management consultancy that works in the public and social development sector. Ms. Gathira also has a global executive MBA from USIU, and she has over 15 years experience, professional experience in the United Nations, international development organizations, and the private sector at a national and international level. Ms. Gathira is an expert at mainstreaming gender and youth through formulation and implementation of programs and other initiatives. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Wanjiru Gathira to give her talk on promoting youth engagement in public procurement in a devolved context. Ms. Gathira.
Like Harrison said, my name is Wanjiru Gathira. I'm the Managing Director of Social Impact Institute. I am very pleased to be invited to this meeting because Emerging Enterprise is working along the same priorities as we are. We are interested in ensuring youth engagement in public procurement in a devolved context because it is important. I will jump right into my conversation so that we can understand where we can actually partner. In my presentation, I'm just going to go through the legal framework very quickly. The youth entrepreneurship and self-employment, give you an overview of devolution, look at the opportunities of engagement at the county level, look at some of the key challenges as to why youth are not engaging in public procurement, and then talk about strategies for improving youth participation in public procurement. Now, just so we're on the same page, I'm not making any assumptions. You know, we could be on the same page but reading different books. I thought it was important to actually go through the definitions very quickly. What is procurement? It refers to the various processes or procedures that are used in the acquisition of goods, works, and services by various institutions, not just government, but there's also other institutions and organizations. What is youth? The government of Kenya defines youth as somebody who's between the ages of 18 and 35. What is a youth-owned enterprise? And this is critical for the next conversation that we're going to have, is that it refers to a legally registered business, whether it's a sole proprietorship, partnership, or a legally registered company. And for partnerships, the youth, the share should be at least 70% for the youth. And this speaks to the proxies question that Nkari was talking about. And what is a government tender? It's a formal invitation by government to supply or contract for goods, works, and services. So just so we're on the same page. Now, in terms, the reason why I'm here to have this conversation is to say there are a lot of opportunities for the youth to engage in public procurement. My question to you is, are you prepared? Are you prepared? And Nkari alluded to this by saying that, you know, assuming that people do not engage in this conversation, the 30% could go down to 10. We must ensure that this does not happen, okay? The President's directive of reserving 30% of all government procurement for the youth is a fact. It is now a key pillar of government, as there is an amendment to the regulation that has not been gazetted, but I want to tell you that it is a fact now, okay? We are not dealing with decrees, we are not dealing with declarations, but we're dealing with a law. However, for the youth to benefit from this opportunity, they must first understand what is at stake. And in order to understand what is at stake, you must be able to navigate the maze, because it is a maze, okay? Now, this is a challenge to you, youth business owners. 70% of the budget, of the 2012-13 budget, was 1.3 trillion, because we are now going into a new financial year, 1.3 trillion, of which 30%, the government spends its money on wages, goods, works, and services. So let's say the wage bill is 30%, 70% for purchase of goods, works, and services. So from a 1.3 trillion budget, it means that 910 billion is for the procurement spend, as they call it. 10% of that, according to the former president, was reserved for the youth. That means 91 billion was for the youth. Okay? In 2013-14, we're anticipating, this is according to the pundits, we're anticipating that the budget will be 1.8 trillion. Can you imagine what we're talking about? 1.8 trillion, they just sound like numbers, which means that for the youth, the procurement spend will be 1 trillion, of which 30% of 1 trillion belongs to you. Now, I'm only focusing on the youth, but of course there's disadvantaged groups, and disadvantaged groups is a legal term, which includes women, youth, persons with disabilities, including SMEs. Okay? I was in a conversation the other day where people were asking people over 35, but what about us? They're provided for in the MSME category. Okay? So this means the procurement opportunities reserved for youth-owned businesses is estimated at 300 billion in the next financial year. Okay? So 300 billion is nothing to sniff at. Okay? If it is well directed, it can drive economic growth through greater youth participation in public procurement. This opportunity can cause a positive ripple effect and create an economic bushfire and growth revolution unparalleled anywhere else in Africa. Okay? There are currently, according to the statistics, there are currently over 6 million youth who are engaged in trade, commerce, industry, and agricultural activity who are eligible for this scheme. Okay? So, this opportunity can turn youth, there's a movement of mohas, movement of hustlers and sufferers. Okay, we need to change them from a movement of shareholders. We really do need to change our attitude about who you are. I am not a youth, I'm over 35, but we need to change that movement. We need to graduate people from mohas to mos. Because now you'll be shareholders. You're not going to be hustlers and sufferers. Okay? So, we're saying this opportunity can create countless African young, successful, I forgot to add successful entrepreneurs here. Okay? But the greatest challenge is how to make it happen. And I'm glad that the chair of the Youth Fund is here because we will challenge him and ask him how this can become a reality for you. Okay? I'm just going to run quickly through the legal framework because I believe, I think lawyers are overrated. Lawyers are really overrated, but you need to understand what the policy landscape is. Because if you do not understand the policy landscape, you're not going to make it, okay, as entrepreneurs. So what are the policies that provide and support, like Nkari said, this conversation? You have the Constitution of Kenya, Article 227, that squarely puts procurement within the conversation, squarely puts the youth within the issue of public procurement. Actually, the president is not doing you any favors. Are we together? It's in the Constitution. It must happen, guys. It must happen. The next thing is the Public Procurement and Disposal Act 2005. Before 2005, public procurement was ad hoc. This brought a lot of, structure to public procurement. Then we have the regulations 2011 that I will speak to in detail after this. The presidential decree, of course, is important because it identified the 10%. It started the conversation about the set-aside. Then you have the County Government Act. This is critical because this is how you're going to be able to implement the reservation scheme. You have the MSC Act, which provides the framework for small businesses such as yours. Then hot off the press is the county government's procurement regulations for 2013. Then, this is not gazetted yet, don't quote me, but it's the Public Procurement and Disposal Amendment Regulations for 2013, and we'll see what that looks like. So why promote youth entrepreneurship and self-employment? Why? Why now? Okay? Because you heard what the president said yesterday. There's 40% rate of unemployment in this country, of which 70% affects the youth. Those numbers are unacceptable. Okay? It is critical. Youth entrepreneurship will create jobs not just for the youth themselves, but they will also employ other youth. Okay? We want to promote youth entrepreneurship because it will bring the alienated and marginalized youth back into the economic mainstream and give them a sense of belonging and meaning. Right now, most youth, educated and otherwise, are operating on the margins. We need to bring the conversation back to the mainstream. Okay? It will also help to address the socio-psychological problems and delinquency that can arise from joblessness by equipping them with new skills and experiences. And then these skills can be applied to other challenges in life and promote innovation and resilience. Okay? And continuing on why to engage with youth, entrepreneurship can promote revitalization of the local community by providing valuable goods and services. Okay? And capitalizing on the fact that young entrepreneurs are particularly responsive to new economic opportunities and trends. Like Nkari was saying here, there are a lot of people, young people here, who have businesses that can, add value. My organization is a capacity development firm. Okay? There is no reason for the government to go and hire McKinsey. Okay, let's say McKinsey is our competitor. Okay? There is no reason for them to hire people who do not understand the local problems and therefore cannot come up with local solutions. Okay? So emerging enterprise needs to be at the forefront of ensuring that if anybody in this room or on your platform has goods and services and works that they can sell to the government, to be at the forefront of ensuring that they apply, because we also have a role to make sure that we are able to provide valuable goods and services, okay, that are responsive to new economic opportunities and trends. Okay? Youth entrepreneurship can also be a source of new jobs and economic dynamism and improve youth livelihoods and economic independence in developing countries such as ours. Okay? So, this conversation calls for a bottom-up method for generating an income, self-reliance, and a new innovative path that Nkari was talking about, okay? So that we can segue from the informal economy to the formal economy. Okay, now I want to put devolution in perspective. Imagine that you're a CEO of a company that is about to change dramatically, right? Your shareholders have voted to radically restructure by establishing offices all over, much closer to your clients in 47 counties, and giving those local managers the power to make decisions on behalf of the firm. The question then becomes, how do you implement such a radical shift? Okay? What corporate functions do you leave out? Do you leave at headquarters? Which ones do you delegate to the field offices? How much budget will each get? How do you maintain how do you maintain coordination? This is actually devolution, but from an individual point of view. You're a CEO of your own company. How many of us are CEOs of our own companies in this room? I just want to get from a feel of hands. Okay? So these are some of the questions that you would ask yourself, even if you are franchising, like Nkari was saying, say you are franchising. These are some of the questions that you would have to answer. Now, for the government of Kenya, it's facing a similar situation with devolution, but the challenges are far greater because instead of looking at return on investment, they are looking to build a more prosperous, inclusive, and equitable society. Okay? So we will look at the units of government to see, and this is very critical, to see where your enterprises can supply goods, works, and services. Devolution is key to the success of public procurement. Okay? So what are the units of government? There's a county assembly. Okay. Youth enterprises must understand devolution like the back of their hands. When I say the county executive committee, where does it sit? Okay? When I'm talking about the county secretary, who am I talking about? Okay? But let me just break it down to you quickly. At the county level, you have the executive and the legislature. So the legislative arm of a county government is the county assembly. The executive, you have the governor, and then you have the County Executive Committee, which has departments, agriculture, environment, that kind of thing. And then, because each County Executive Committee member will manage a department, then under the County Executive Committee, we'll have a County Chief Officer, a CEO, who's like a PS. You get? Because the CEC is like a cabinet member, as it were, and then the CCO is like a principal secretary, as it were, at the county level. The county secretary then becomes like the Kimemia. You get? Like the Mudaura, as it were. Okay? I'm just using terms that you can relate to. And then so that's at that level. And then within a county, you have decentralized units. Now in Nairobi, and I'm taking Nairobi as an example, the decentralized units includes all of this, okay? So you have sub-counties managed by a sub-county administrator, you have wards managed by a ward administrator, you have villages, and I'm not talking about Oshago, I'm talking about, administrative boundaries called villages, which will be determined by the county assembly. So you have villages managed by a village administrator and a village council. Then there are 3 cities in Kenya right now, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu. So those retain their status. They will have a city manager and a board, reporting to a board. You will have municipalities managed by a municipal manager and a board. You will have towns managed by a town administrator. And then, of course, you have the County Public Service Board. And this is how it looks like, okay? I'm not going to bore you with the details. I have left the presentation with Nkari, but, it just breaks it down. For a city, you need to have at least 250 people, municipal town. 4 units with high population concentrations, and then for units with low population concentration includes sub-county, ward, and village. Okay, moving right along. Now, what are some of the opportunities for engagement at county level for businesses such as yours? Okay. Youth enterprises can provide county governments with goods, works, and services as per the functions that have been transferred from the national government. As of July 1st, all the functions will have been transferred to the county level, and they include and are not limited to this here. There's agriculture, health services, cultural activities, county transport, pre-primary education, control. There's a lot that can be done. And even beyond what is here, all those offices that you saw there, there's opportunities to provide services. And for instance, in the County Government Act, the County Government Act allows you, thank you, Simon, allows you, and I'll read, to get into a contract with a private agency, and I really want to read this so that you can. Powers of county governments, and I quote, without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1, a county government may enter into a contract, acquire, purchase, or lease any land, or delegate any of its functions to its officers, decentralized units, or other entities. So a county government may enter into partnership with any public-private organization in accordance with the provisions of any law relating to public or private partnerships for any work, service, or function. What this means, what this is saying is that emerging enterprise can enter into a contract with the county government to provide services. Yes, but you have to go, it's like any work. When you want to work with somebody, you approach them and you tell them we can provide service X, Y, and Z. Will it take 18 months? Maybe, maybe not. We partner with government on a lot of the work that we do, and it takes a long time. If you want to work with government, you must be patient. You really must be patient because of the bureaucracy. But the County Government Act allows for organizations like yourself to enter into contracts with it for services rendered. So these are some of the things that you can provide in addition to others that you may think of. So, there are also further opportunities for engagement through local funds. The Equalization Fund, which is in marginalized areas. There's the Contingencies Fund, there's the CDF, There's the Women Enterprise Fund, there's the Youth Fund, and there's the SME Fund. These are the opportunities. It's massive. It's an overload, and we must step up to the challenge. Next. Now, this is the reason I was invited here, but I took it upon myself to add extras, but this is why I was invited to talk about the policy landscape as it regards the preference and reservation regulations. And I'm happy that Harun Moti from PPO is here to correct me where I may be wrong, but this is my take on it. And I'm just going to take you through the highlights and show you that what the youth are doing is squarely within the law and the opportunities that exist in that process thereof. So we'll go to the next slide. We'll start with the regulations themselves. These are just highlights. What is the purpose of the scheme? How many of us are familiar with the scheme, with the regulations 2011? How many of us? Okay. I can forward you the soft copies, and then you can sambaza widely. But I just want to tell you that it is critical for you to read for yourself. You must understand what you're dealing with so that you can ask for your rights, you can claim your rights. If you do not know what is out there for you, you cannot then ask for it. Are we together? Okay. So what is the purpose of the regulations? And I have a copy here, I'm happy to circulate it. The purpose is to promote local, national, and regional industry and to support socioeconomic development. Who are the target groups? I think Nkari had alluded to them. They are SMEs, women, youth, persons with disabilities, citizen contractors, local contractors, and citizen contractors engaged in joint venture or subcontracting arrangements with foreign suppliers. Eligibility requirements. A youth must have the necessary qualifications, capability, experience, resources. I'll circulate them so you see for yourself. This is abbreviated. You must have the legal capacity to enter into contracts for procurement. In other words, legal capacity means that you must be a legally registered company. Okay? It costs 900 bob, guys, to register a sole proprietorship. There is no excuse for any youth not to have a registered company. It doesn't have to be a registered company. I mean, it can be a sole proprietorship. You must be a legal entity. You must not be insolvent, bankrupt, or in receivership, and you must not be debarred from engaging in public procurement proceedings. Okay? The other thing of note is that is the type of goods, works, and services reserved or set aside for target groups, such as the youth. They include motor vehicles, plant and equipment assembled in Kenya, furniture, textile, foodstuffs, and other goods made in Kenya, goods manufactured, mined, extracted, or grown in Kenya. And then there's the last one says, among others. I'm not sure for lawyers in the house what that's subject to interpretation. So whatever, you can put everything in there because it just says among others. Regions where the scheme will apply is at constituency and at county level. Next slide. Now, this is critical. The general principles are very, very critical for you as youth and enterprises. Candidates are entitled to a single preference and reservation scheme at a time, as in I'm a woman, for instance. Let me use myself as an example. I could choose to be registered as an SME or as a woman. Or yourselves, you can choose to register as youth, and some youth can be women, and they can be SMEs. You get my point? You can choose, but you are only entitled to, if you're entitled to more than one preference, then the one with the highest advantage to the tenderer will apply. Now this is critical. Procuring entities are allowed to unbundle goods, works, and services in practicable quantities to ensure maximum participation of disadvantaged groups. Unbundling only applies to disadvantaged groups. And don't forget, disadvantaged groups is a legal term, so don't quarrel with why they're calling you disadvantaged. Okay? Now, unbundling means is that you have, say, 100 units of, books that you want supplied. That can be broken into two. It can be unbundled, not to avoid certain types of procurement, but to make sure that more than one person benefits. Are we together? Yeah, so you unbundle it. So this is allowed, and this is something that emerging enterprise can watch. Okay. Okay? Now, no tender security is required. Okay, you don't need tender security. But you must sign a tender securing declaration form. Okay? You're entering into a legal contract. And any bidder who fails to adhere to the terms of the document is liable to debarment. Of course, you have certain obligations. You must meet those obligations. If you don't, you're liable. Yeah? Now, there's another thing that is called a framework contract. This is also very critical for the youth, that provides youth enterprises with an efficient, cost-effective, and flexible means to procure goods, works, and services continuously over a period of time. Instead of providing like the 100 pieces, the 100 items at once, you can provide them over a period of time, and this now comes back to your capital. You know, how much money you may have at any given time to be able to provide the goods, works, or services. So the two things to really think about are unbundling and the framework contracts, because they allow youth enterprises to be able to engage, you know, in a more successful way and not fail, as it were. Okay? Now, this is the county governments, public procurement and disposal for county governments regulations. And nobody should say that the current government is not doing anything on procurement, because these things are coming hot off the press. This is in April. Okay? Now, these regulations for county governments are only applicable to procurements by public entities within a county. Okay? Now, again, notice the language. The purpose of the regulations is to operationalize the application of the Public Procurement and Disposal Act in county governments, promote local industry, support socioeconomic development at the county level. Okay? Now, what are some of the public entities? Okay? They include the ones that I showed you there, the county government, county assembly, city urban area, county service delivery coordinating unit, and also primary schools, clinics. Any entity that uses government funds is a procuring entity. Are we together? At last count, there was 30,000 procuring entities in Kenya, and those, of course, are set to explode because now we have 47 counties. Okay? Now, Section 11 of this regulations mandate, and shall is the operative word. County governments shall apply preference and reservations to small and micro enterprise and other disadvantaged groups that are located and operate within the counties as specified in the regulations that we just talked about. Shall. Okay? So the door is wide open. We have no excuse to say what people should do. The question is what we will do, because this is mandatory. The next slide. Now, this is the amendment, and I'm talking to it very generally until it's gazetted, but if you have more questions, please ask Mr. Moti of PPOA. But some of the highlights are, please notice the language again. A PE shall set aside at least 30% of its procurement spend to be implemented through engaging enterprises owned by youth, women, and persons with disabilities, and MSMEs. Okay? All procurements using the request for quotation methods shall be reserved only for youth enterprises. Okay? And the most important thing, a PE shall not charge a fee for copies of tender documents. Woohoo! Yay! For those of you who've tried to tender government procurements, it's been a nightmare, 5,000, 3,000, and then you're not even told, now I'm blaming PPOA because they're in the house, you're not even told whether you made it or not. And can I tell you something? Apply for government tenders now that it's free. It'll only cost you your time. However, in the event that you obtain a hard copy of tender documents for a procurement proceeding and you fail to submit a bid, you will be charged. Tuko pamoja? Because youth are notorious, people are notorious for going to take forms just for taking the forms. And then you don't do anything because they've incurred a cost, yeah? You'll be charged something, a fee, a surcharge not exceeding 5,000 shillings, and you can understand why. Okay? Now, what are some of the key challenges? Now we've talked about all the good things, the door is open and all, but what are the barriers? Okay? it is a fact that the youth are ill-prepared for the current opportunities in public procurement, and that is why I appreciate the fact that emerging enterprises are at least taking the effort to bring this conversation to the table. Okay? Many youths, to be honest with you, do not consider entrepreneurship as a genuine career path with financial reward and work satisfaction. They only do it kujaribu or if you have nothing better to do. Okay? But most importantly, the government itself and the youth and enterprises like Emerging Enterprise, nobody's going to police you from outside. You police yourself from inside. Okay? You have to guard against the possibility of youth being fraudulently presented as owners, paper shareholders,